It's one of those things that I always tell people, make sure, we're all excited. We do these interviews and then someone comes back to us and you know how you felt. And I felt like we're so excited that we get this job offer,
Yeah.
right? And we're elated. We're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe I got this job offer, right? And there's always sometimes those set of questions that we forgot to ask. And so I get this job and I was clearly way in over my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working for Kaiser and I've got to like build their call center infrastructure. And I've run like one 30-person call center my entire life for 1 year. That was my experience. And now I'm taking 52 different locations and bringing them into one site. So I go to the site and it's a big mud puddle. And I went out to the construction trailer. I asked the guy, I said, where's the call center? And he goes, it's the mud puddle. We can't build. It's been raining too much. And I'm like, oh, aren't we supposed to open on June 1st? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, you can see there's just mud out here. So I remember calling. That was that question I forgot to ask. Like, well, what year are you opening the call center? Well, this was the end of January, and we were opening June 1st of that year. So I had basically 4 months to get a call center up and running. And that's not just building a building, that's creating the technology, it's getting all the telephony in, building the CRM as well. That's hiring 100 customer service agents and building and conducting a 6-week training program. And so I remember calling up to what in Oakland, Kaiser, they call program office up in corporate. I
Yeah.
called the program office and I just said, "Well, you got to tell me what year we're building this because there's no way we're going to have this done by June 1st this year." And they're like, "No, that's the year. That's when we're doing it. Good luck." And I'm like, "Holy smokes!"
This is Leadership Sound Bites. Real leaders, real moments, real growth.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites. My very special guest, Rob Munson, who is now the VP of Plant Operations at Sutter Health. And so here's the frickin' connection, people. I first met Rob when I worked at Centene, and Rob, you were over, I don't know
All the
how.
call centers. Yep.
Yeah, the
Member
contact
provider
center.
call centers. Yep.
Yeah. Um, and then I worked for another part of the org doing change management, and we first met, I think within the first month of me starting
Yeah.
at Centene. And so I reached out to you, we connected. You wrote a book called Moving Forward, which is super
Mhm.
awesome. I want
Yeah.
you to chat about that for a minute if you don't mind. And
Okay.
then I'd reached out to get you on the podcast, and you're like, yeah, it's great. And the next thing I see is you're now working at Sutter Health. Well, I was at Sutter Health for 17 and a
Right.
half years, and I'm like, this is so weird.
Yeah. A lot of
So
connections. A lot of
yeah,
connections.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to this chat. I have a lot of respect for you and how you engage with people. And I know from personal experience, there's some amazing people at Centene, and there's some people that aren't so amazing at Centene. And I think the ability to lead authentically, um, in spite of or in spite of what may going on around you that doesn't align with who you are authentically, is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'll say about that. So you have a quote, sir, to kick us off with.
Yeah, I do. It really ties into some of the things you've already talked about. But one of my favorite quotes is, "You haven't changed a thing until you've changed a life." And
Oh,
so I kind of carry that sentiment into leadership with me that as I look at my team members, I have the honor of leading them and serving them. But I also have the distinct honor of helping them advance in their careers.
mhm.
And so, part of that is really thinking about where they're at, where their skills are, where their gaps in their skills might be, and then, creating like a development plan for them. And so you think about that, from a development standpoint. And for me, I know I have the opportunity to give an employee a set of experiences. So
Mhm.
maybe they are part of a project team that they might not have been on before. And then also the opportunity to give them some level of exposure. And so, I've had folks that that started with me as customer service reps that are now vice presidents in their
Mm-hmm.
respective companies. Because I saw that they had a genuine willingness to advance, and then I just needed to really set the environment up for them to be successful, to show their skills, and to really cheer them along the way, kind of as that leader. So, and so the book that I wrote, Moving Forward, really goes along the same lines. And the reason I wrote the book was because of, executive coaches like yourself that encouraged me to put it all together, to compile it into a book. But these were just it's 75 stories,
Mm-hmm.
and they were a series of newsletters that I wrote primarily when I was at Kaiser. So I spent 22 years at Kaiser
Mm-hmm.
building their call center capability and turning around a lot of their kind of failing operational areas, billing, enrollment, claims, member grievances, and the like. But I started to write this series of articles because what I saw in a lot of people, a lot of the employees and team members there, is just they had kind of almost a nascent fear
Mm-hmm.
of what the future holds, what growth opportunities might look like. I talk to employees who I would say, hey, are you applying for the team manager position? So it's like moving from a customer service rep to that supervisor level, right? Just one hop up, and they say, oh, no, I'm not gonna do that because I might fail at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, so you're afraid of failure? Oh yeah, I don't want to look bad, and I don't want other people to see me as a failure." And I said, "Well, do you think I've ever gone into an interview and not gotten the job?" "Oh no, you must have always gone into the interviews and gotten the job." And I said, "Oh boy, you don't know enough about me or my life." And then I would tell them through really more of encouragement, like, "Let me tell you about a time in my life when I failed at an interview, and here's what happened." And here's the result. The result is I learned a lot about myself, and I learned what to do differently for next time. And as you can see, that apparently I have passed some of the interviews to get to that VP level. And so a lot of them would change their mind and then apply. Oftentimes they would get that job and they couldn't read, they were just like beyond themselves, like, wow, I can't believe I'm now a supervisor, team manager. And I would sit there, encourage them, say, hey, this is awesome. I'm glad that you took a risk
Mm-hmm.
because, and kind of in our day and age, a lot of people are risk adverse. And so part of me writing these articles was, hey, here's a time maybe when I took a risk. Maybe I succeeded, maybe I failed. But at each time, if I failed, I got off the ground and I continued to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was just my way of encouraging employees that I would never, for the most part, never meet because I was running these large operations, let's say two, three, four, 5,000 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And now I had this personal connection with that frontline employee. So ended up spending about 6 months compiling the book, polishing it up and getting it out and published. And then probably 6 months or so after that, it became a number one bestseller on Amazon. So, excited for people to take a look. Again, it's 75 stories that are focused on encouraging folks that may be a little bit dismayed about the direction of their career or their life. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of parents tell me that they read the stories to their kids, as kind of like, not that it's like a bedtime story, but just like, hey,
There's
here's a
hope.
guy that did this and he failed at something. So I talk about my baseball career, talk about my family life, my work
Yeah.
life, and the
Yeah.
like. So yeah, so that's
Well,
really the
what I love about it, Rob, because I was in the room with you and your team on supported on a number of different occasions, I got to hear the stories, right?
hmm
That stuff. And what I love about this is that the book gives those stories legs to where people
hmm
that would, it's the same thing with the podcast, people that wouldn't normally be in the room with you, hearing what's going on, they're able to be in the room with you
Yeah.
through the stories. It's because they were newsletters that you also did at Centene when we were there.
That's right.
Shared stuff
Yep.
that was going out. Um, one thing when you were talking, and I don't know if I'm imagining this or not, but there was one thing I remember you talking about. It was at Kaiser, I think. You were going to go run a call center or something, and you go, and there's no building at the address. It was
Yes.
like puddles of water, mud,
Yes.
nothing
Yeah,
to go on.
it was a big mud puddle in a field. Yeah, so the it's one of those things that I always tell people, make sure, we're all excited. We do these interviews and then someone comes back to us and you know how you felt. And I felt like we're so excited that we get this job offer,
Yeah.
right? And we're elated. We're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe I got this job offer, right? And there's always sometimes those set of questions that we forgot to ask. And so I get this job and I was clearly way in over my head. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working for Kaiser and I've got to like build their call center infrastructure. And I've run like one 30-person call center my entire life for 1 year. That was my experience. And now I'm like I'm taking 52 different locations and bringing them into one site. So I go to the site and it's a big mud puddle. And I went out to the construction trailer. I asked the guy, I said, where's the call center? And he goes, it's the mud puddle. We can't build. It's been raining too much. And I'm like, oh, aren't we supposed to open on June 1st? And he's like, I don't know. He goes, you can see there's just mud out here. So I remember calling, that was that question I forgot to ask, like, well, what year are you opening the call center? Well, this was the end of January and we were opening June 1st of that year. So I had basically 4 months to get a call center up and running. And that's not just building a building, that's creating the technology, it's getting all the telephony in, building the CRM as well. That's hiring 100 customer service agents and building and conducting a 6-week training program. And so I remember calling up to what in Oakland, Kaiser, they call program office up in corporate. I
Yeah.
called the program office and I just said, "Well, you got to tell me what year we're building this because there's no way we're going to have this done by June 1st this year." And they're like, "No, that's the year. That's when we're doing it. Good luck." And I'm like, "Holy smokes!" But I ended up pulling the team together and we pumped the water off the site. We got the folks to be able to start to build that building, and then I challenged the tech team and others to say, can you guys get this in and deliver this? I remember writing on a napkin with a pen the fields for the CRM screens. I said, I want this, this, and this, and this. Now, again, I was a manager level at Kaiser. I was way in over my head. But I had a vision for what I thought the department could be like.
Mhm.
I had a lot of people at the time, or at least I felt that way, that were kind of against change. I was representing change.
Mhm.
And we ended up, it was crazy. We ended up opening on June 1st at 8 a.m. A customer service rep named Kathy took the call. I stood next to her and took a photo and said, hey, I can't believe we did it. But those were a lot of 16-hour days, definitely 6 days a week to get it up and running. And then I focused on the culture after that and really how are we going to create a really long-standing positive culture. Because what frontline employees and today at Sutter Health,
Mhm.
VP of Plan Ops, right? And so Sutter Health, for those that may not be familiar, we have about 3.5 million lives in northern and the central coast in California. We've got like 28 acute care facilities, like 300 clinics, 60,000 employees, 14,000 aligned physicians. So like it's a big company.
It's a lot, and volunteers, and a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, big company, lots of products,
Yeah.
a lot of amazing people within the Sutter footprint. But it's like for me coming to Sutter, much like I did at Kaiser, is to look at what processes do we have, and then to help encourage the frontline employees. One of the slides I recently put together and then talked to a bunch of team members about was the lifetime value of a customer, right? Well, in business, people, oh yeah, I understand lifetime value and the sales costs, and yeah, but do the frontline employees understand what it means? And
Mhm.
so what I showed the call center agents, I said, hey, do you know how much revenue you speak to in a year? And they're like, how much what? And I like, how many dollars worth of customers you talk to each year? And I, can you guess? And then be like, 100,000, 500,000, a million. And I said, well, let me show you the math. And I showed him the math. And I said, you talk to almost $10 million worth of revenue, worth of members
Mhm.
per year. I said, so do you guys think your job is important? And they're like, now we do. And I said, that's why getting it right the first time is key when you think about that lifetime value of a customer. So my goal at Sutter is to, at the end of the call, to have the member more loyal to Sutter Health than they were at the beginning of the call.
Mhm.
Right. And so I'm building that approach into the culture, and then really showing the employees as well, like, hey, leaders care about you. We care about your careers. We care about the work struggles you may be having. If we're having system problems, where let's figure out how to fix them to make that employee experience something that's amazing.
Mhm.
There really is. I would call it a cultural revolution right now going on at Sutter Health. We have a new CEO who's been there a couple years. I've only been there a few
Mhm.
months, as you know,
Yeah,
but a
Warren.
couple of years, Warner Thomas, and he is doing amazing things to the Sutter Health culture, and really giving a purpose and vision and mission to folks. It's kind of like a fresh wind is
Mhm.
being blown into Sutter Health. So I really expect some big things over the course of the next number of years,
Mhm.
across the Sutter Health footprint.
It's interesting because I started with Sutter Health in 2003, right? And so now
Hmm.
we're in 2025. And Sutter Health was this, big carrier, battle carrier, battleship,
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
that you don't have the agility of moving quickly with anything. And so I watched it go from um, just one region, individual boards. There were 50 some odd boards, I think, when Sarah Crevens and another group of people went around so we could get from that to 5 regions, then to 2 operating units. And now Warner's is one Sutter, right?
Hmm. Yes.
And what's interesting, people go, okay, we're done with 5 regions. I said, we still can't do what we need to do as quickly as we need to do it with 5 regions. You just can't. So, and then 2 operating units are like, well, we're done. I said, I'm not seeing done yet. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing that
Yeah.
you can do what you need to do with operating units. And so the speed with which Warner has moved is something that up until that time, Sutter Health had not experienced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everything
Yeah.
was
It's
a
it's
long
amazing.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long shot. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting because I'm still connected to people in the org. And it's been interesting to watch the visibility to where I see
Mhm.
more Sutter Health activity on social media than I've ever seen since that front and center, because I don't know how many people actually knew what Sarah Crevens looked like.
Yeah.
Pat Fry before
Yeah.
her, some
Sure.
people knew, but I don't know that that many people knew. Van Johnson, I think before Pat,
Right.
and I didn't know Van, but I knew Pat Fry and,
Hmm.
obviously Sarah Crevens. But it's just interesting the difference that it makes because the world around us has changed. And
Yeah.
so it's important that we stay relevant in that way as well.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, lacking that visibility, people create different scenarios and stories as to why things are happening or what is really happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like culture wise, I think people want to work for a winner.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you just watch Warner move and shake, right? I mean, we've opened up 18 new clinics this year. There's another, between now and the end of the year. So we've only got, what, about 4 months left. Another seven will open. That's like
Yeah, but you built
25
you
in one
built a
year.
call center. You built a whole call center when there
Well,
was
I built a call center from a mud puddle. So yeah,
anything's
certainly
possible.
understand that. That's right. I
Anything's
agree.
possible. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I love it. I love the story of hope too, Rob, and stuff, and then engaging. And the thing that you called out that is so freaking important is that frontline people are the people, for the most part, that are the contact with your customers.
Yeah.
And yet those are that's the population typically that they're not, I'm not saying ignored, but we're not connecting dots for them.
Yeah, they're not listened to.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so when I sat down with a group of agents, I guess it's been about 3 weeks ago now, sat down with them and they were kind of looking around at each other
Why are we
why does he want to talk to us? You know? And I say, what are some of the problems the members are having? When you talk to them, and they're like, what? Like, do they have billing issues or claims issues or like what's going? So all of a sudden, then they realize, oh, you want to learn from us. I said, I just want to learn what's going on. I said, when you go home tonight, I want you to tell people, tell your family or your close, colleagues or whomever you're with. I said, tell them you met with the VP of plant operations today. And they're gonna be like, oh, wow. And you also tell them that you're smarter than he is. And they're going to be like, what? So they were all looking. I said, so who talks to the members every day, me or you? And they're like, well, we do. And I said, okay, who knows kind of the pulse of what the member issues are, within Sutter Health? And I said, me or you? And they're like, well, we do. And I said, so then what use am I to you? Like, I'm like just this dumb person here. But I said, you know what I have? I said, I have a pen and I have a pad of paper and I have the ability to affect change here. So if you will teach me what's going on, I promise you I will address every one of the issues. It's not going to get lost on me. So there were a couple of issues that literally the next day I solved.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not me. I know nothing. It's the teams that support Sutter
Yeah.
Health.
Yeah.
But when you think about a member that maybe has called in multiple times, and any call center, this is going to happen. But do we have a process to escalate it?
Mhm.
And that we're looking at the data in a way that allows us to say, hey, we need to go call this person back or that. I built all of those capabilities into Kaiser. I'm working to build those capabilities here at Sutter Health. But listening to the frontline employees make them want to then provide you additional use cases, if you will, on how to improve the customer experience. Again, if you go back to lifetime value of a member, my goal is to retain all of our members. Let's not give them a reason to quit because of some administrative hassle factor.
Mhm.
Let's, have a friendly rep that's able to address their issue. Let's look at closed loop customer service processes so that it's not some open-ended, piece that Michelle called in, but I don't know if she got
I
helped
don't
or
know.
not. I handed her off and
Not my job.
hopefully, it's like this, I call that like customer service by faith. Like, well, I hope that she got it. Don't know, not sure. And
Yeah.
then what happens is a month later you call back in and say, hey, that they never resolved my issue, right? And so now it's Groundhog's Day. The customer is now like disillusioned, like, man, are you guys going to help me or not help me? Like, and then when they have their chance in open enrollment for, if you're a commercial member, you're going to have generally that chance each year. Maybe you switch over to some other place because you're like, well, this place is just too much of a hassle. Well, all I want them to think about is I'm in the shadows. I don't want them to ever think about call center or claims or or anything. I want them just to think about their experience with their physician and their health and not have an administrative hassle factor. So I want to be kind of this invisible department for them that if they need us, they can call us and we can help, and that we resolve their issues quickly, and that we're really learning. And so when I meet with those agents, I'm just learning from them. Like, okay, this is where kind of maybe the big bucket of problems are. Now let's go do some process work. Let's map it out. Let's look at our data, kind of in Six Sigma fashion, if you will.
Mhm.
And then let's go after and start trying some stuff out and see if our treatment of that causes some positive change. And if so, then let's double down.
The other thing that you've done though, Rob, in doing that is you've given people a voice. They feel heard. You planted a seed that this does matter and can flop the narrative that people have is leadership doesn't care, because that's what people tend to tell themselves.
Yeah.
If they may have surfaced an issue at one point, It never got resolved. And then they tell themselves leadership doesn't care.
Yeah.
So now what you're going to have, my gut is, if it hasn't happened already, is a lot more feedback coming from frontline staff that's not solicited the way that you directly solicited
Oh
it,
yeah.
because they're going to go, oh my God, he did. Okay, well, I got 10 more things
Yeah.
that came up.
I've been getting emails. I got a few of them this week.
There you go.
Where people are saying, "Hey, how do I get on the focus group? Like, I heard you talk to, one of my colleagues over here, and you resolved a couple of problems. So how do I get on that list? When are you coming back out here? When can I meet with you? Right?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's creating that communication, mechanism, and then trying to have them realize and believe and understand really how much power they have, how much influence they have. Again, just any of the listeners can just do the math and how many dollars in revenues are your frontline employees, talking to or working with each year, and all of a sudden you realize it's like a crazy, again, $10 million a year
Yeah.
per agent. So
Yeah.
I'm like, your job's important.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked to them recently about being the CEO of your own desk,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the notion of, if you have a mindset that you control the outputs of your work, your productivity, your attitude, your relationships with others, your quality, right? Then essentially you're the CEO of your own desk. You can control that. And so I'm trying to help shape the mindset to say, you're actually a really, really important person here.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you might not feel that way at times. And then, as you know, at Kaiser and Sutter. So, and then this month, I actually, or last month, sent out my first Moving Forward newsletter to
Okay,
that
there you
team,
go.
right? To the team. So they're now starting to get that information. And again, what I love about that is I send it out from my email, so
Yeah.
I'm able to dialogue with the agent or the person reading it back and forth. That sometimes they're telling me stories like, oh yeah, this is how this relates to me, and we can
Mm-hmm.
go back and forth. And they're like, like, you actually do care, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, I do care. I
Mm-hmm.
want you to become the best version of yourself possible. And again, kind of back to the quote, it's like, you haven't changed a thing until you've changed a life.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that opportunity as leaders to be able to mentor. I mean, you do this for your business. You're mentoring people to help them change, their approach so they can help so many, many other people.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I'll say, Rob, that stands out is if there's leaders that haven't done the math and have not come to the realization that the people that are at the front line are vitally important to their business and what's going on, is I encourage you, do your own math.
Hmm.
For some reason you haven't walked that journey and had the realization that entry level positions, which a lot of times frontline tend to be, the
Yeah.
first people that meet, they're the entry level positions, that the value for them isn't quite what other more skilled positions are. Do the math, because what people care deeply when they're, what did Maxwell say, John Maxwell? It's like, people don't care what you have to say until they know how much you care, something along
Sure.
those
That's
lines.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
But it's one of those things that demonstrate to them that you care about them as humans and not the title that they have.
Right.
Because then people are going to engage more deeply. They're going to be accountable for the job that they do. Talk about CEO of your own desk or whatever's going on. Cy Wakeman has this thing that she said, which I totally believe. She talked about accountability. She said, we keep going after engagement. And if we go after engagement without accountability, we have entitlement. So develop
Interesting.
accountability. And it's not about holding people accountable. It's about developing them being accountable. And the talk that you gave and the acknowledgement of how important each of those frontline workers is, you created accountability. And so they are now reaching out to you going, well, what about this? What about this? I want to
Hmm.
and they're engaged.
Right.
because accountable people are engaged.
Yeah, I agree.
So cool stuff, sir. I want to have you back at some point.
Okay.
Just let me know when that works for you. If you're open,
Yeah,
I'm just assuming you're going to say yes.
of course I will. Of course I will.
And so, as we wrap up our time today, what one or two things, Rob, do you want people to walk away with around this stuff that you shared? Cool stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I would so get an opportunity to visit a frontline team member or a group of team members, and if your organization has a call center, maybe go take some time out of your schedule, go visit them, go do some side by side listening, kind of hear what your customers are saying, and then get a feel for how they're being handled, or your team members able to work through their issue on that first call, that notion of first call resolution or one touch, right? So I would just encourage you to find some time, go do some side bys with them and kind of understand what that experience is like. I think it'll be incredibly beneficial. I have had leaders all across the companies I've worked for. I've encouraged the CEOs and others to come into the call center. They've done it and they've really learned a lot, and it's actually kind of changed their approach to leadership at times. So do that. And then secondly, where you can or are able to, have some of those focus groups just to try to understand. You learn so much about your company. Now, again, there sometimes people are going to be closed up because they're afraid to talk. And so it's just inviting them, in a way to say, how can I improve the customer experience? All I have is a pen and a pad of paper,
Mhm.
and getting them to feel at ease, and I know that, like I said, they were, because now they're coming out of the woodwork to figure out when I'm going to come back. So
I
find
have you.
that time to do some level of a focus group. It won't take a lot of your time. You could do in an afternoon, you could listen to calls and do a focus group, and all it would cost you is, 4 hours of your time. I know your time's valuable, but you will learn so much about how your organization's operating, and then how to, move your organization forward, if you will.
Thank you. I'm going to say yes, 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 exclamation points to all that stuff. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. It reminds me of a quote from Dr. Ellen Parker. Anyway, I'll remember her last name. Anyway, it was, when you know that you don't know, then you pay
Mhm.
attention. And
Yeah.
when you pay attention, you will see what you were otherwise blind to.
Mm.
And so we don't
That's good.
know.
That's a great quote.
We don't know. I heard it at 5 o'clock in the morning on a podcast, and I said, I'm going to go write this puppy down. So I encourage you, admit what you don't know. I don't care what level of leadership, how many years you walked on the planet, whatever's going on, step into spaces that you're not quite sure of and admit that you don't know, and then stay curious and learn.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
anyway,
Wonderful.
thank you, thank you, thank you. This is
Awesome.
Leadership Soundbites with
Yeah.
Michelle and Rob. And until next time, please like, share, subscribe. Have a freaking awesome day. Thank you.